Welcome back to the newest premium unit. If you're here right now, you likely got lucky or spent your savings. If you're watching far from the future, you got her for a bargain. When you put it that way, it's kinda unfair like that. Summoner Yuna's Trustmaster reward is a materia that boosts evoke damage by 30%, and gives a chain ram buff that you might recognize from Avalanche's Tifa's Trustmaster reward. Her Super Trustmaster reward is an accessory that boosts attack, magic, and spirit, but the real important part is the 50% limit burst damage buff that's just dangling right next to it. It also gives the ability Hymn of the Faith, which raises the damage modifier for sources of evoke damage. When equipped onto a Tidus or Yuna, it also gives them an additional 500 attack and spirit. Unfortunately, unlike Avalanche's Tifa Super Trustmaster reward, it appears that this effect may not be stackable. Onto her active abilities. Protected by the Remnant of a Dream gives your team a 50% physical and magical mitigation buff against aquatic and fairy enemies. At EX plus 2, she gets Knowledge of the Staff, which lowers the enemy's staff resistance by 30%. She also has a batch of select white and green magic. Cleanse is niche but exists. Kuraga and Asunaga are basic healing options, and the bar elemental spells may actually help depending on the fight. Passives. But for Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equipped, she gets 500 spirit and automatically generates 3 evocation orbs every turn. She deals increased damage to Reapers. She also automatically fills the evocation gauge by half when she enters the fray. Not only that, but she has a passive regen for the evocation gauge that occurs every turn. When summoning Ifrit or Shiva, she'll activate an area effect that buffs everyone's fire or ice resistance by 50%. Unlike past evokers, these two do not buff damage output, so don't summon them if they're going to make the enemy sturdier. On the other hand, if she summons Anima, she'll activate an area effect that buffs dark damage by 30%. This doesn't buff elemental resistance at all, so it can throw you for a loop if you're unaware. She prefers to carry a single weapon, and while she can hold a shield, she also can't. Her normal attack has been changed to deal magic damage that scales off her spirit stat, and fills the evocation gauge by 1. At EX plus 2, she gets 500 spirit. She also automatically fills her limit burst gauge by 60 crystals at the start of the battle, resulting in an instant limit burst if you've leveled it up. Speaking of which, let's look at her limit burst. It gives her team a powerful double 160% Reaper Killer buff, and then strengthens the damage modifier for evoke damage type limit burst. It also deals light damage that scales off her spirit stat. Time to change forms. Summoner Yuna's Brave Shift has a 4-turn duration and a 5-turn cooldown. Onto her active abilities. Energy Raid requires 1 evocation orb for each use. It deals light evoke damage that scales off her spirit stat and chains of bolting strike. Alleviate is a Grandis ability that can only be used once per battle. It raises Yuna's light damage by 30%, her spirit by 280%, her limit burst damage by 200%, and fills her limit burst gauge by 60 crystals. Passives. In this form, she shifts her stance to damage. Her evocation passives still remain, so overall she just gets stronger in this form. She gets half the boost to the chain cap limit, and still prefers to carry a single weapon. Her normal attack has been changed to deal evoke damage and decrease accuracy by 25%. Let's look at her limit burst. It deals strong light evoke damage that scales off her spirit stat. It's her classic evoke finishing move. Let's rank Brave abilities. I recommend raising Energy Ray for the damage modifiers, and something mangoed and slobbery, because the name's pretty funny. Time to make a damage rotation. I'll assume you've got her limit burst maxed. On turn 1, you have no offensive abilities except for her normal attack. And while I would recommend that, I'm pretty sure most of you would rather use her support abilities instead. Regardless, once her limit burst is ready, go ahead and cast that. On the next turn, activate her Brave Shift, Alleviate, and then double cast Energy Ray. On the turn after that, cap a chain with her limit burst. For the rest of her Brave Shift, triple cast Energy Ray. If you're lucky, you may get a second limit burst off, but that's a bit tough if Yuna's limit burst demands. Regardless, after that you switch back, so have fun spending 5 turns doing whatever as you wait for her Brave Shift again. If you had her at EX plus 2, then you'd be able to use Hymn of the Faith and Knowledge of the Staff, which will bolster her damage output by incredible degrees. So, EX2? At EX plus 2, Yuna gets a Staff in Peril, 500 Spirit, and an instant limit burst if it's at max level. The 500 Spirit is pretty simple, raising her damage and overall utility, though of course the Staff in Peril is the ability that can potentially end up helping the rest of your team. Getting an instant limit burst also speeds things up, as you don't have to rely on others to fill her limit burst gauge at the start of the battle. Plus, you get her Super Trustmaster reward, which can also boost your team's evoke damage, so overall EX plus 2 is an important pursuit, though admittedly pricey. At EX plus 3, Yuna gets her vision card. Yeah, that's right. As a premium unit, you don't get her vision card at EX plus 1. You get to select a vision card ticket instead, which supposedly should have been updated, but I guess the developers forgot. Well, either way, it makes this video still relevant, so that's cool. Anyways, Yuna's vision card is pretty simple, boosting spirit and granting a double killer against fairy enemies. It's at max level at the moment you get it, so you don't have to worry about spending additional materials either. Overall, it's a strong card for spirit users, and the fairy killer is no doubt helpful when called for. However, it's also rather expensive given the cost of EX plus 3, and that's not even taking Yuna's status as a premium unit into account. Well, how good is Summoner Yuna? Frankly speaking, as a supporter, she's a mixed bag. On one hand, her normal support abilities are incredibly average. They're helpful, yes, but are they really worth the price for a premium unit? She's limited to a double cast in her base form, and at a low level she has very little to offer compared to the other support units we've had. However, it's her unorthodox support abilities that deserve attention. The Staff Imperial at EX plus 2 speaks for itself. The mitigation is, well, that one's still niche. But it's the ability from her Super Trustmaster reward that also can't be overlooked. Buffing evoke damage and inflicting a Staff Imperial can really bolster other evoke damage dealers by incredible degrees. Oracle Maiden Lunafreya in particular really sees a big jump with these buffs. And we can't forget about her Brave Shift. Bolstered by her own abilities, Yuna becomes a monster in her own right. Or rather, the monster she summons is the monster here, in big thanks to all the flat spirit Yuna can boast as you raise her. Unfortunately though, even though she can hit like a truck, she can't keep it up that well. First, not only is her limit burst incredibly cost heavy, her kit does nothing to help it along. Not only that, but unlike the last 3 premium units, Yuna does not have a true Brave Shift. In fact, after her Brave Shift ends, you have to spend 5 turns in her base form, doing something, as the rest of your team fills her limit burst gauge. Her EX plus 2 abilities and admiring her CG limit bursts are likely the most consistent components you incorporate as you wait, but either way that still leaves 3 turns just standing around. Of course, if you've got someone or something that can let Yuna chain, then you can give her something to do, but of course that depends on her current inventory. Overall, Summoner Yuna is a unit that is limited by her inventory. Her base form is incredibly average for the premium price, though once you get her to EX plus 2 she gets much more impressive. Her Brave Shift is incredibly powerful, and with certain equipment and support units, you can raise her strength even further, making her one of the strongest units in the game. Yuna is a unit that fluctuates, either average or brilliant, depending on your team and equipment, but if there's one consistent thing about her, she's expensive. You need a lot of investment to make Yuna stand out, but the payout is certainly well worth the cost. Of course, whether or not you're ready to undertake such a matter is another issue entirely. This is where you start telling me you got her for free. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you got Yuna. I sure won't. Absolutely not. Someone help me.